Thank you for joining us today. My name is Maria Madrid, the Director of Latino Services at the Colorado Gerontological Society. One of my primary functions at the Society is to oversee our advanced care planning efforts, including community education. Today, I'm very excited to bring to you a wonderful panel of individuals that will provide us a lot of needed information on the Psychiatric Advance Directive. So today with you, we have Moe Keller. Moe Keller is the Director of Advocacy at the Mental Health Colorado. We have Jonathan Culwell. He's a probate attorney at Glatstein O'Brien. He has extensive experience working with issues around mental health and guardianship. And also we have Hope Hyatt, Executive Director at Colorado Mental Colorado Mental Wellness Network. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to get into the topic. So let's get started.
Thank you very much. And we're pleased that you all joined us. And we're going to begin with Jonathan on our learning objectives for today.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Today's learning objectives in regard to the Colorado's first Psychiatric Advance Directive. We will be summarizing the origins and rationale for an advance directive that relates to psychiatric treatment and care. We will list potential benefits of using and employing the use of a psychiatric advance directive through an agent. And we will also discuss approaches to overcoming the barriers in implementing the Psychiatric Advance Directive. I'll hand it over to Moe.
So psychiatric advance directives are really a core to the right of an individual to have personal autonomy. And as you can see here, the courts have ruled that there's no right that's held more sacred or is more carefully guarded by common law than the right of every individual to the possession and control of his own person, free from restraint and interference from others, unless by clear and unquestionable authority of law. But we have the right as individuals to the right to privacy. We have the right to bodily integrity. We have the right to self-determination and the right to informed consent. And these are all incorporated in advance directives, and you may be familiar with medical advance directives. You may be familiar with guardianship. You may be familiar with having an agent work on your behalf, someone who's your power of attorney or whatever. These are things that you have a right to be able to put into writing that would be respected by the medical community and the legal community in terms of how you want to be treated when you are in a situation where you are unable to relay that yourself. And so psychiatric advance directives are anchored in this constitutional right. I mentioned many people know about living wills. People know about power of attorney. And people, you do have the right to make psychiatric care choices. And all of those are included in the Psychiatric Advance Directive. And you may ask, like, why a Psychiatric Advance Directive? There are many reasons why an individual may be in such a state as deep depression, where they are unable to explain and or discuss with a medical provider or a family member what it is that they're feeling and how they would like to be treated when that particular situation encounters. Or sometimes people have psychosis. They can be unable at that time to be able to relay how they want to be treated, what medications work for them and what don't, those kinds of things. That's all in a psychiatric advance directives. And we do know that people who are actively engaged in their own health care have a better quality of life and a better recovery. So people who have self-determination and are able to be a partner in their healthcare coverage, they have better employment situations, they have less physical abuse, more community integration. And also, it supports the principles of recovery. I'm going to decide how I want to work with my family, how I want to work with my medical provider in my care. And so, person driven, based on respect, involving those people that you want to have work with you when it comes to your recovery. So, what is a Psychiatric Advance Directive? Jonathan?
Let me unmute. I didn't want to have any of that extra noise coming in. But yeah, thank you, Mo. So what is a Psychiatric Advance Directive? Earlier, we mentioned that people can execute a living will. And in Colorado, we call those, technically, it's an advance directive for medical or surgical treatment. And that might relate to this a little bit, right? Here, with the Psychiatric Advance Directive, we're allowing someone who, while they have, when I say we allow, that means the law now allows that when someone has the ability to make decisions, medical decisions for themselves, that they can enter into an advance directive to tell their care providers and treatment team how they would like that care to be administered when they are not able to communicate that, or when they are not able to make those decisions based on informed consent. So it provides those written advance instructions, and as well, it can also, in Colorado, allow somebody else to advocate for them, either as they say, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit, as they say, or in their best interests. So then, therefore, the goals of a Psychiatric Advance Directive. We are ensuring then that with this law, people are treated according to their wishes, whether they can say that for themselves or not at the moment they need treatment, that the communication is clear and coherent and provides a mechanism for exchanging clinical information and consenting or refusing to treatment that may be applied based on the presentations of that person's mental health disorder. And like I mentioned, a person can appoint a decision maker, a healthcare agent, if they are incapacitated through this form.
So why have a PAD? Hope?
Thanks, Mo. Why have a PAD? A PAD is a legal form that allows people to refuse or give consent to future psychiatric and substance use treatment. For the first time in Colorado history, we have a law that provides us the ability to have self-directed and self-determined care. When a person has a voice and choice regarding their preferred treatment and services, each one of us is the expert in our own wellness and recovery, and what works for us and what doesn't. PADs give the opportunity to tap into our own awareness and expertise while we are in times of wellness to determine what care we need and want in times of crisis. This is our vehicle to operationalize and direct the care we want. PADs give us a possibility to explore our wellness, develop our expertise, and discuss planning and recovery with our family, friends, and providers. It's an effective communication tool between people and their providers for effective treatment. PADs help in times of crisis and when it may be hard to give information or self-advocate with healthcare providers. PADs go even further to look at our whole holistic, real, everyday lives, such as during a crisis. What arrangements need to be made for the care of our children, our finances to ensure our bills are paid, who is going to take care of our pets, who will water our plants. Additionally, we can give permission for the people we want to be there, and sometimes more importantly, we can deny permission to the people we don't want to be there. The list goes on why to have a PAD. Why is a PAD important? Well, your PAD helps your doctors and family members understand your wishes about medical and behavioral health care. It can help them to follow psychiatric care you have determined for yourself. PADs give providers who may not know you information which will help them provide you with good care. Self-determination and choice are important parts of life and recovery and living resiliently. When a person and their provider agree on treatment, it is more likely to be followed by a person. Informed consent and shared decision-making improve the quality of a person's life, as well as their treatment outcomes. Learning about all treatment options and taking responsibility to plan for our behavioral health care leads to an improved quality of life. PADS allow family or agents to speak directly with providers during a crisis, gives direction and approval for family or agents to help make decisions during crisis. It supports autonomy and empowerment over your behavioral health care. It may reduce involuntary treatment and may improve your continuity of care. Honoring PADS is a condition of participation in Medicaid and Medicare for treatment facilities.
So if you decide to create your own form instead of using the form that is being offered through the Mental Health Wellness Network, then you need to know that the form must contain the individual for whom the care will be provided, their name, date of birth, gender, as you see here is on the screen, eye color, hair color, the race or ethnic background of that person, and their instructions concerning behavioral health treatment. In addition, on the next slide, a PAD must contain instructions concerning, in regard to that specific behavioral health treatment. There must be medication, including primary and alternative instructions, instructions concerning alternative treatment, and instructions concerning appointing an agent or not appointing an agent. Another thing that's very important is that if a person decides to appoint an agent, they must include the information on the next slide.
So the law requires these things if an agent is appointed. The agent has to give their name, address, and telephone number. And what's their scope of authority? So you can have an agent who says you can cede all your control to that agent to do everything for you, to talk with, make medical decisions, to talk with attorneys, to talk with the medical providers, to make the decisions about your family situation. Or you can limit that. You can say, I don't want an agent to do all of that for me, but maybe I just want an agent to talk to the ER staff and make sure they understand the medications that I'm taking and what I don't want to take because I've had an adverse reaction to those medications. So you can limit it to what you want. That's up to you. And then that agent is limited based upon what you write in your Psychiatric Advance Directive form. And so they can make us, they have the authority to make the decisions, but only the decisions that you say you want them to be able to have on your behalf. And also, if you're looking for an agent, really make sure that that agent is willing to be an agent for you. Don't just pick somebody. Make sure that that's a person you trust and a person who is willing to take on the responsibility, because it's a serious responsibility to be an agent. And they definitely have to have signatures of the person's signature, your signature, the agent's signature if you have one, and then you have to have 2 disinterested witnesses sign to say, and their role is to say you were not coerced, no one forced you to write this, that yes, you this is your volition, you wish to do this, that you initiated it, and that you are, as far as they can tell, just like a will, you're in your sound mind and able to understand what it is that you're putting down on your pad and what you are writing. So you have to have those 4 signatures, yours, your agent, if you have an agent. If you don't worry about that, and 2 disinterested witnesses' signatures. If you have an adult healthcare provider, make sure that that's in the form so that if you are in a situation, a crisis situation, an emergency situation, that the responding physicians or EMTs or whatever will have that healthcare provider's name, address, and telephone number so they can connect correctly and quickly. And then if you're enrolled in a mental health or healthcare facility, such as a hospital or a long-term care situation, that's also available information on your pad. So requirements. I'm sorry, Jonathan.
Requirement of creating a pad. Thank you, Mo. Yeah, no, I get that little thing that pops up that tells me, hey, by the way, you're still muted. So again, I'm not advising that anyone does or does not create a pad, but if you are going to, I'm going to tell you that the pad requires that a person must be of sound mind and free of coercion. And again, this means that two disinterested witnesses must attest to such decision-making capacity and to that freedom from coercion. So with those two disinterested witnesses and able to attest to both of those things when they're signing the form, let's talk about what that means. Sound mind under the Psychiatric Advance Directive of law is defined as the ability to provide consent to or refusal of behavioral health treatment, or the ability to make an informed behavioral health care benefit decision. And then disinterested witnesses can be a little bit of a sticking point, but we felt, well, I think the proponents of the bill that became law felt it was very important listening to all of the people who have lived experience to understand that they didn't want people who had an interest in making sure someone stays on medications to kind of push that person into a treatment plan they didn't want. And so from those lived experiences, the bill required, and now law requires, that your witnesses cannot be this list of people here: spouse, partner, a family person generally, romantic partner, etc. You see that on the screen. So with those requirements to execute a psychiatric advance directive, I think it's important that we recognize that this is something a person does of their own volition.
So what are the basic legal components of a PAD? Well, in the instructions, obviously, it's a legally recognized document now in Colorado state law as of 2019, and it is your direction on psychiatric care written in advance of when you may have to use it, much like you do a living will or much like you do a physical advance directive. You're making decisions now while you can think about them and give them time and contemplation, so that later, if should something happen to you in terms of depression, dementia, or other mental health condition that can be debilitating every once in a while, that this will be your voice. This will be for you. The agent, as I mentioned before, may be named to carry out instructions, and you can decide that. And the PAD, by the way, is executed by a person who is 18 years of age or older. It is not for children. This has to be adult-based. And so we talked about some of the instructions that are commonly in a PAD. So here are some examples. I authorize my agent to get me behavioral health help if I start hearing voices telling me to hurt myself or things of that nature. You can also ask for alternatives to hospitals. I prefer to go to a crisis bed. I don't want to go to that hospital. I want to go to another hospital. I will take this medication. It can be an antipsychotic medication. It can be an antidepressive medication. But I've learned from past experiences that this dosage is too high for me, and I have adverse reactions. As a matter of fact, it was interesting when we talked to individuals who have been in the emergency room and have had that experience about medication being administered involuntarily, is that it sometimes was not the medication per se, but the dosage amount that was the problem. And so we made sure to include that here as well. Adverse reactions. I'm afraid of shots. Don't give me a shot. That'll exacerbate my situation. But pills are okay. Give me a pill instead. And because of past trauma, I cannot be put into restraints. Do not use restraints. That'll make it worse, but do this instead. These are behaviors that are helpful to me. These are approaches that are helpful to me. All these things you can put in there based upon your past experiences, and they are to be honored. Now, it gets complicated in an emergency room setting, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, where medical professionals have to have a little bit of discretion, as you can understand. But this is basically what we're doing. So, setting treatment parameters. I authorize my agent or my provider to treat me with this if they decide on it. But if I have these following side effects from that medication, I want it to be reduced or stopped. That's also possible. Now, we make sure to tell individuals when they are filling out a psychiatric advance directive that it's not a wish list. You can't say, I want top of the line medication all the time. I want, give me all the medical marijuana you can find. Clearly, that's not something that, it needs to be, a matter of fact, would not be honored if it goes against the medical protocol or the medical ethics of a provider. So understand that this is a needs-based, it is not a wish list for when one writes a psychiatric advance directive. So there are things that you may have heard of called medical advance directives, and I'm going to refer to Jonathan, who deals with the legal side of things.
Right. So, there's some concern how this psychiatric advance directive would interact with involuntary holds. To understand an involuntary hold, if a person is found gravely disabled or a danger to self or others by a certain statutory group of people, police officers, nurses, doctors, an involuntary hold can be placed. It's commonly recognized as an M1, and that takes precedence over the PAD requesting voluntary treatment. However, even if there is an involuntary hold or if it continues on into a certification, the provisions of the PAD are still honored during that involuntary hold. And then if the person is subject to, again, that certification, the involuntary commitment, the PAD is still honored during that time as well.
So why have an agent? What does the agent do for us? We've mentioned about this to some degree already. But their primary purpose is to make sure that the instructions on your PAD, your psychiatric advance directives, are carried out. They will work with the care providers when it's hard for you to do so. The agent has if your agent has a more flexible directive, they're able to adjust to unforeseen circumstances. So, for example, if the person who has written the PAD is unable to express their needs and the agent takes over, they might be in the hospital and the doctor can come by and say, well, I'd like to do this new medication. It's not on the PAD list, but we think this is superior to the other medication they're taking. The agent can actually do that, can say, okay, I will consent to this on their behalf if you allow them to do so. So it's important to try to anticipate potential unforeseen situations.
A PAD can also discuss and talk about, provisions that maybe the person has children. And so on the PAD, it might be important for a person to indicate that and what kind of provisions or people to contact if there are other people who have legal authority to take care of the children. Same thing for finances. If there's something important there, indicating who your agent is to start to make sure your whole network and team is put together. And as well, pets, plants, things that are important that might need a little care while you're receiving your own care. These things can all be placed in a PAD. Of course, if there is something that needs legal authority, especially with children or finances, something that really is very important and needs a person, an agent would need to have um, authorization that they could provide to somebody like a bank or a daycare, school. You'll need to go through other areas of the law to associate that. But I think it would be wise to make sure that you're, if those things are appropriate for you, that you've communicated that on the pad as well. And no, can a person prepare a directive in the hospital or while they're under commitment? So this is a really interesting question, right? Because there's nothing that speaks directly to this. What we know, and we've talked about this morning or on this call, on this podcast today, is that we know that a person can enter into a psychiatric advance directive when they're of sound mind. We've talked about the definition of that. And when there are two disinterested witnesses. So here we're talking directly to, what about if someone's hospitalized or under commitment? I think the question then becomes, do they have sound mind, and is it physically, practically possible? Are there two disinterested witnesses that can help? A few things on the screen here to consider is whether there's impaired judgment, whether if their capacity to make those informed decisions is available. Certainly, if it's part of a discharge plan before the person is released from the hospital, nothing in the law is going to indicate that that would be problematic. And so you have to walk through those specific pieces in order for a PAD to be effective if someone does fill one out while they're in the hospital or under commitment.
So, where to keep a pad? Hope?
Colorado does not yet have a registry for directives, including PADs. If a person has an agent, it is essential that the agent have a copy. Currently, the most comprehensive and encouraged way to store your PAD is wherever your PAD will be most accessible to you for you to access in case of a crisis. It has been advised to keep it on your refrigerator so it is handy for emergency personnel. Additionally, it is very important for your agent, family, and your medical and mental health provider to have access to your PAD. If you have a designated hospital, it is encouraged they have a copy of your PAD. It could also be kept electronically at your attorney's office. Electronic storage. So since Colorado does not yet have a registry for directives, including PADs, we are actively working on electronic storage and registry to help streamline the process of PAD storage and retrieval. Our goal is to have this easily accessed through our website at coloradopad.org, where our hope is to have an option to securely store your PAD and have it easily retrieved by providers across the state. It is important to note that it's up to you to voluntarily share your PAD on our colorado.org website when it's available.
Additionally, there are concerns about release of information. And the law for the PAD does indicate that providers transferring a person from one facility to the other are required, if there is an effective PAD, to transfer it with the person. The PAD additionally was created with the intent to allow a person to release information to their agents, the information being that which is on the PAD, and to the disinterested witnesses. And then as well, the PAD was created to allow a person to release the providers in their treatment team to speak with and communicate with the agents who might be effective at the time the PAD is needed to be relied upon. So the provider obligations in implementing a PAD, once the signatures are on the PAD is effective. We talked about needing signatures from an agent if you decide to have an agent. We're talking about all signatures that are required on the PAD. So if there is no agent, then obviously you're not going to have a signature in that situation. Then when the PAD is presented and made available to the provider must act in good faith per applicable standards of care. And the compliance with the PAD to the full extent possible under those standards of care and ethics consistent with the practice. And the PAD form would have to be complied with by the provider. Again, there was obviously we can't tell doctors how to practice in their practice and how their ethics are concerned, so they monitor that. But then there was also concern that a doctor might cause substantial harm, and so by following the PAD. So there's a requirement there that unless substantial harm is going to be caused, the provider must comply with the PAD instructions. That was intended to make sure that when a person says what their care needs are, that those instructions are followed. However, there was a little pushback there, and so providers have a little bit of leeway to make sure that somebody who is using a PAD for improper purposes is not going to be able to be effective at the time treatment may be needed. So hand it over to Mo.
So Colorado is unique. Almost every state in the country now has a Psychiatric Advance Directive law in state statute. And we looked at those. We looked at a lot of those around the country, and we learned from some of what they had and what seemed to work out and what seemed to not work out so well. So we put in our law some things that are fairly unique. For example, the first one is that in order for the Psychiatric Advance Directive to be recognized and implemented, does not require a mental health professional to declare someone of sound mind or, in other words, unable, so not in sound mind, in order for the PAD to be implemented. So many of the states require that if an individual is in the emergency room, their Psychiatric Advance Directive does not take precedence and does not get implemented and is respected until a mental health professional came in and said, yes, this person is no longer of sound mind. Yes, they have to. Now the Psychiatric Advance Directive can actually take place and we can use it. It becomes implemented on the date of the signatures that are required. So it goes into effect right away. So it's always available. It's always respected at all times. It does not require a notary. Not all of the states require that, but we don't as well. So we don't have to have a notary because we have the two disinterested witnesses. And I mentioned it's effective upon signature. Now, another thing is a PAD cannot be revoked orally. In other words, in some of the states, it says that a PAD can be revoked at any time if a person says, I want to revoke it. We've run into situations where in an emergency room or even in a hospital setting, there's directives for the healthcare professionals and personnel to be able to follow, but the individual may be in such a state that they say these things, like I revoke it, not necessarily understanding what they're saying or what it means at that time, and then there's no protections for the individual. And all their work that they had gone through in filling out the form and making sure that they had all of their information there and that they had their wishes to be complied with is all gone. And then we're back to where they have no protection. So we wanted to make sure that that scenario did not happen. However, a Psychiatric Advance Directive can be amended at any time in a written format. So they can revoke it and they can amend it. And if they amend it, then the period of time for which a psychiatric advance directive is to be implemented starts on that amendment date. And they can revoke it, but they have to have two witnesses again to say, yes, this person is revoking it of their own free will. They want to revoke it. They're not being told to revoke it. They're not being coerced to revoke it. It's their personal decision. So again, we go back to the two witnesses who are disinterested folks to make sure that the individual is still protected. So what happens if a person refuses to go along with things they consented in the directive? Jonathan?
Sure. So this is exactly the point of a PAD, right? An agent can be instructed in the PAD to work with providers to implement instructions and make the decisions as needed. The PAD, again, it doesn't override, and it's not ineffective if there is a commitment needed, and if under the commitment that a doctor might petition the court for involuntary medications, but that the PAD is clearly going to be important to the court's decision in that case. And I think that that's, again, consenting in the advance directive to this treatment is important for understanding how to implement that if these other items are necessary. Someone wants to discharge against medical advice, even though there's a PAD in place, then the hospital might need to place involuntary commitment in order to keep them in the hospital and to protect their due process rights. And again, as Moe mentioned and talked about, at any time a person has decisional capacity, they can revoke their PAD in writing. So the disinterested witness element, again, comes into play because revoking the PAD requires two disinterested witnesses to sign, and that cannot be a healthcare provider, physicians and employees, any licensed, certified, registered, or regulated mental health provider, and it cannot be a healthcare facility. So then we're looking into, as you see on the screen there, hospitals, hospice, nursing facilities, dialysis, etc.
So to round up here, we put some links in. The first link is the actual bill, Senate Bill 1044 that was signed into law in 2019. So if you wish to refer to the actual statute that provides for authority and legal recognition of a PAD, you can go there. The second link is the form, which was quite an undertaking to create. We had to make sure that it was completely legal and addressed everyone's concerns and get it all into a concise form. I will mention that the form is 8 pages long. That sounds like a lot. It moves quickly, of course, and it's not that difficult to fill out. However, it does not have to be this form in order for a psychiatric advance directive to be recognized by law. So we created the form so that individuals would have a template to use to start with, or you can take parts of it and make your own form as long as it has in it the required, by statute, the required things that has to be in it. So whether you're going to have an agent or not, the signatures of yourself, the two disinterested witnesses, all your personal identifying information that we talked about at the beginning, and that you incorporate the medications piece. Those are the big ones to be included in a form. So I do want you to know that it doesn't have to be this one, but it does have to have those components to it. And then this last, I will open up right now, and this is the coloradopad.org website. And we created this so that, and this is up and running, this will have all the information that we're talking about in it and some other things as well. and it is housed at the Colorado Mental Wellness Network homepage, home site. And so I'm going to defer to Hope. She is who is the executive director, and she's going to take it over from here.
Thanks, Mo. And I think you're pulling up the website.
Now it shows on mine. Does it not show on yours?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sometimes I think when you're sharing a screen and you switch, I think you have to do a new share to show.
Yes, Mo, you would have to go ahead and do a new share. Also, just to note, the links and the slides will be available as part of our podcast. It will be posted on the Society's YouTube channel, and all the links will be made available, in addition to also putting this information on our website. On our website, we have the information on the bill, we have the information on the form, and we will make sure that we also add the website, so that way, as part of your overall advanced care planning, if this is a need that applies to you in your whole advanced care planning journey, you could go ahead and also take care of this piece, and you have the items that you need to make informed decisions for yourself.
I am not seeing how to be able, I can end the slideshow, but I would have to bring up
Yes, you would have to end the slideshow, and then go onto your internet browser, whichever one you're using. So one of the things that I could do is pull it up, and let's see. Okay, so I will go ahead and share it.
Yes, thank you.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
There we go.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
Thanks, Maria. So we designed the coloradopad.org website to just be really easy and streamlined to find whatever it is you might be looking for. On this front page, you can see, just as it says, we created this website to help you understand psychiatric advance directives for you and your family. You can scroll down, and there's like the 10 tips for completing an effective advance directive. And anywhere on any of these pages, you can get to where it is you might want to go. Like what is a PAD? Why a PAD? And we have a pretty extensive PAD frequently asked questions page that drops down, and you can click on wherever you might, any questions you might have. Just really wanted to make this as easy as possible to find what it is you might be looking for. And we even have our presentation today is uploaded on the site. So just wanting to provide the people of Colorado the easiest way to access information, to answer questions. Additionally, we've created a training. Originally, it was for peer support specialists across Colorado. So peer specialists could learn the importance of a PAD and how to support someone in writing a PAD. We had the opportunity before COVID to get one of those in-person trainings. But at this point, what we've done is created and brought that training to our website. So there are trainings on here on what is a PAD and the legal aspects of a PAD. And we're still kind of ironing out some of the last pieces, and they will be uploaded here as soon as they're done. But we have the PowerPoint presentations that were here today. And additionally, if someone is looking for training, you can fill out the information here to request a training, and those will continue in the future as well. And then there's also anywhere on the website, you can actually start your PAD. So when you're ready, it's in the upper or down, it's pretty, there you go. Or it's in the upper right-hand corner. It's very easily accessible. So here is one way to start your pad, to download the form, which we have electronically, and gather your answers, fill it out on the fillable PDF pad form, and you can have your two disinterested witnesses sign it, download and print it to deliver to your agent and a provider. And at this point, this is where our functionality is. But at some point, our hope and goal is to additionally, as you scroll down, you'll see our goal is to have an electronic and safe storage site for your pad. And that is coming soon. And there is a little box if you're interested in learning more information when that is coming and as it kind of evolves. Feel free to put your name and email there so we can let you know as soon as that is available.
And this is an important feature. We talked all about the pads, and we did say, we earlier on about making sure that your pad is available. It's not going to be helpful if you fill out the whole thing and then put it in a drawer or keep it at home and not share it with anybody. So your agent needs to have a copy. We recommend that you go to your doctor and give him a copy so it's in his medical records. Go to the hospital that you normally might go to or what you think is nearby. Get it put in your records there. They can scan it in so they don't have to have a lot of paperwork, or they can put it in your paper file. Make sure that your family has it. If family members that you want to have it. And then we are also in discussions now with a number of other providers and potentially emergency response teams about possibly having access to a pad. But make sure you get it out there for those that you trust and those that you want to have it.
And one other piece on that, you can download the form and fill it out like a pen and paper. But we really wanted to help support folks so that the handwriting is clear with the ability to fill out a fillable PDF form on our website. So that option is there to then be downloaded and printed or shared as well.
So that is our presentation on Colorado Psychiatric Advance Directives. And we want to thank Maria and the Colorado Gerontological Society for showing interest and giving us this opportunity. And Maria, thank you very much for being such a gracious host.
No, thank you. A very warm thank you to all of you. One of my personal goals with advanced care planning is that we look at the individual as a whole, that we're looking at the medical, that we're looking at mental health, that we're looking at finances, that we're looking at all the legal aspects. What happens when we pass away? So our advanced directives are a reflection of all of those things. So it doesn't start and stop just with one area of our lives. And that is what I truly appreciate about the document that you created, because it not only addresses the individual and the preferences in one area, but also notes that we're multi-layered and we have different aspects in our life that also need to be taken care of when we are physically or mentally in need of treatment. So thank you very much for sharing all of that. You had some wonderful best practices to follow, and I would just like to highlight some of those. Please have conversations. I know a lot of people say have the conversation. I say have the conversations before you complete any form, whether you use the pad or you write your own. So that way, the folks that you are going to engage in being your agent or alternates or anything like that, they know. We never want to set ourselves up for failure where we haven't had those conversations. Something happens to us, the form is available, and now we're at square one because that individual or individuals did not know that we appointed them as our agent. The other thing that I heard that is very important is that it's focused on our needs. We have this tendency to talk about wishes. We really need to focus on needs and our preferences, because we don't know what any medical or any other type of crisis might look like. So we really need to focus on our needs and our preferences to cover a wider range of different possibilities. The other thing that I heard very loud and clear is that tools are available for you. They're completely free. Please take advantage of those. Finances shouldn't be a barrier to accessing these wonderful tools that take individuals like Hope, Jonathan, and Moe many hours of brain power collaboration to make it accessible for individuals. So thank you once again, a very warm thank you for making sure that we talk about such an important topic that personally I think is not highlighted in advanced care, in advanced care planning as it should. So thank you very much. We will make all the links and information available in the video description. So once again, warm thank you and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.